All right, Jesse. We'll give you the 5 count here, and then the meeting's yours.
All right.
5, 4, 3, 2, and 1.
Good morning, everyone. And once again, thank you for taking your time out for this meeting. I'd like to officially call the meeting to order. First thing on the agenda, I will be calling roll call. And please, as I announce your name, please acknowledge by saying present or here. Adrian, Merlin Entertainment.
Morning, Jesse, here.
Morning. Brandon from the Lake County Agency for Economic Prosperity.
Present.
Thank you, sir. Dan from Rosen Shingle Creek.
Good morning, Jesse. Present.
Good morning. Frank from Wyndham Destinations.
Morning, Jesse. Present.
Thank you, Frank. Michael Thomas from John Michael Weddings and Catering.
Good morning, present.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Phil Brown, Orlando International Airport. Phil Brown. Sandy from Truist. Sandy, was that you?
Yes, I'm here present. Sorry.
No worries. Thank you. And as everyone knows or will know that Dr. Wong, co-chair, is going to be joining us in a bit. He has another meeting that conflicted, so he'll be on in just a moment. Next on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. The working group members have received the draft of the meeting minutes. And do we have any changes or comments in regards to the minutes from the May 18th meeting? If we have no comments or revisions, I ask for a motion to approve the minutes.
Giordano, motion to approve.
Thank you, Dan. Second?
I'll second. Sandy.
All right, Sandy, thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Awesome. Thank you. The minutes are approved. I'll move on to the public comment. In an effort to comply with the CDC social distancing guidelines and for the safety of the residents and task force members, the Economic Recovery Task Force Bringing Back Tourism Working Group will conduct meetings virtually. Orange County remains committed to providing an alternative platform for residents to have the opportunity to submit their public comments. I will ask Orange County staff to read the public comments we received online and add it to the public record. Please note, public comments received that do not include the required information will not be read. Comments that extend beyond the set time limit will not be read in their entirety. However, the resident's entire comment will be entered into the public record. Please note that the time allocated to each individual for public comment via online submission may be reduced from the normal 3 minutes based on the number of speakers. I ask now, Lucas, do we have any public comment?
No, sir. We have no public comments for this specific working group at this time. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So no public comments. We'll move on to, I believe, the Orange County attorney. Is that correct, Carol?
That is.
All right, we're going to pull it up, Aaron. Out of that PowerPoint. Share that. Georgiana, you on? Georgiana?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am. We've
okay, great.
Your presentation.
Good morning, everyone. This is Georgiana Holmes, Assistant County Attorney out of the County Attorney's Office, and I wanted to come to you this morning because we have started on Monday reviewing several of the presentations from area attractions that fall within this process that was identified in the governor's latest executive order. And we have more presentations scheduled for today. But I was listening in on Monday and I heard at the end of the last meeting that the discussion had begun to be kind of what were the next steps and essentially asking what is the process for how to handle the submitted plan. So I wanted to take a moment today to just review the executive order so that we all kind of understand what it says and that we can plan for the next steps together for getting these plans related to the smaller amusement attractions out of this working group with a recommendation to the full task force. So next slide, please, Lucas. So the executive order, I just will touch on the highlights briefly, as we know, was issued and was effective on Monday. It expanded the operational capacity for restaurants, retail sales, museums, and gyms. It does have a section related to professional sports, vacation rentals, and it did allow for the extension of relaxing some guidelines so that local governments can conduct public meetings using technology similar to how we're meeting today. But the focus for this bringing back tourism working group is on section 3, which relates to amusement parks. Next slide. So under section 3 of the executive order, it says that amusement parks may submit a reopening plan to the state of Florida that includes the proposed date for resumption of operations and proposed guidelines to ensure that guests and staff are safe. It also states that requests to reopen must include an endorsement letter from the county mayor, and that the request should identify a future date certain for reopening and verify that the county mayor has approved the reopen plan to ensure that patrons and staff will be safe. Next slide. So in order for us to comply with this order, as most of you know, Mayor Demings has asked that the amusement parks have their reopening plans presented to this Bringing Back Tourism Working Group for review and then recommendation to the full task force. The work of the task force up until this date, where it relates to talking about businesses, we have always talked about classes of businesses, and there's been a lot of healthy discussions about particular for this group, what bringing back tourism looks like, what it looks like for restaurants, for hotels, for retail establishments. We've had conversations about the airline industry. Some of the other working groups have gotten into what safety guidelines are for a particular class of business like barbershops or hair salons, but we haven't really had any work that required us to look at individual plans for individual businesses. And so while your work on the task force began with a presentation of kind of the sunshine law as it relates to public notice requirements and refraining from speaking to your fellow task members outside of these notice meetings in the quote unquote sunshine, now the work that's being asked of you would potentially require you to vote on something that you may have a conflict of interest. So I wanted to just briefly discuss what that looks like and what the requirements of it are. Next slide. So hopefully you read the material that was circulated with your agenda that just kind of gave a generic overview of what a voting conflict looks like. As these specific amusement park plans for reopening are submitted to the Economic Recovery Task Force for consideration, any member may need to declare a voting conflict and abstain from voting if the specific plan under consideration would economically benefit or harm the member. So I put the language there, a voting conflict requires abstention when you are being asked to vote upon a measure that would inure to your special private gain or loss, or that you know would inure to the special private gain or loss of a family member or a business associate. That special private gain or loss is almost always interpreted to mean financial. It is an economic benefit, and it is not something that's speculative or remote. And family member would include your immediate family, your spouse, your parents, your siblings, your children, or your in-laws. And a business associate would incorporate those that you may have as a partner, a joint venture, or co-owner, or a corporate shareholder in any of the businesses that are submitted, that are submitting plans today. And so if you believe that you would have a special individual private gain or loss that would be financial, it's not remote or speculative. It's not based on a number of contingencies that must occur in a particular order for the outcome to be certain. But if you believe that that fits you, then there is a requirement that you announce that you have a voting conflict and that you abstain from voting. And then there's some paperwork requirements that would need to be filled out and submitted within 15 days. For the way, Next slide. So for the work that's being asked of you today, like I said, we had some plans that were submitted on Monday, and we will have more plans that are submitted and that have been submitted and will be considered today. There may be future plans that you will be asked to look at a future date. But for the plans that were submitted on Monday and for the ones that you will consider today, please keep in mind that what we're looking for is what was in the executive order is that they obviously contain a proposed date and that their guidelines are appropriate for their establishment to ensure that the guests and staff can return safely when the operations resume based on their particular specific business. So at some point, once the plans are submitted today, there will need to be action coming out of this work group to make a recommendation to either approve or not approve the plans that have been submitted to go to the full Economic Recovery Task Force. And then out of that task force, they will go to the mayor for consideration as he is required to then write an endorsement letter. So the specifics as it relates to voting, the task was given to the Bringing Back Tourism Working Group by the mayor. So while I know that we have members beyond the Bringing Back Tourism Working Group here today, the voting members for today and for this working group should be those members that are assigned to the Bringing Back Working Tourism Group. For any task force member beyond that working group who may have a conflict of interest when this matter goes to the full task force, any person can participate in these discussions. You just have to announce that you have a conflict and abstain from any voting. So today we will ask at the appropriate time for a vote from the members of the Bringing Back Tourism Working Group only, understanding that we do have broader members here to just participate in a more robust and healthier discussion about these plans. But those members will need to abstain from voting when that matter comes before the full Economic Recovery Task Force. So I think that's kind of the highlight. Hopefully that gives everybody the information that they need to kind of consider the plans that are submitted today. I'll entertain any questions if there are any.
Georgiana, this is Jesse Martinez, co-chair. Thank you for explaining the end of that because that was my question. I just wanted to ensure that today's voting to move to the task force, general task force, was just the task force Bringing Back subcommittee members. So, but you explained that well, so everyone understands here that's on the call itself. So thank you. Any other questions for Georgiana? All right, I think we're good there. Thank you. So now we're going to move on. We had 3 presentations at our last meeting, which were excellent. We do have, I believe, 1, 2, 3, 4 today, and I believe 1 is speaking on behalf of, I believe, 3 attractions. So again, you all have 2 minutes apiece. So please remember that. And then we'll move on to our very first presenter. I'd like to introduce Douglas Rose, Human Resources Director of Face Amusement Group, to provide their update and their guidelines to reopening. Mr. Douglas.
Thank you, Jesse. I am the Human Resources Director for Face Amusement, an experienced company that has been in business for 25 years. I am asking for your endorsement to allow Arcade City and 70 Park Adventure to reopen at Icon Park on May 21st. Our company understands the responsibility of employee and guest safety. Our reopening safety guidelines were developed by our Chief Operating Officer, a former Walt Disney World Vice President. Our employee protocol and guest protection encompasses the 7 guidelines you have established and more. We do practice social distancing with visible signs at the entrance and throughout our location. We encourage all our employees to stay home if they are sick. We back this promise up with offering paid sick leave with no financial worry or discipline action. So employees that are sick may stay home. Our employees are required to wear facial covering, and we provide a new mask as an option for each shift. We do conduct temperature checks and a 10-question health screening document signed by the employee prior to starting each shift. We require employee hand washing as often as possible or every hour. We sanitize our games regularly and after each ride at 7D and promote social distancing by separating families by seats. We have contracted with BioPure, a sanitizing and disinfecting company, to disinfect our locations on a weekly basis. We offer hand sanitizer upon entering and have additional hand sanitizer stations within our location. We have been endorsed by 3 other state governments to reopen and now are asking for your endorsement. Our local management is in Pigeon Forge learning the guidelines to ensure compliance when we reopen. So let us open in a safe manner so our employees can come back to work and we can bring Central Florida back to life. Thank you for your consideration for endorsing our reopening.
Thank you, Douglas. Great presentation. As a task force or subcommittee, I'd like all of us to go through all the presenters. So if you have any questions, please write them down. I'll also ask, I believe I saw Dr. Rawls from Orlando Health on our call. And I'm not sure. How you doing, Doctor? And then I'm not sure if Dr. Pino or Dr. Brady are on, but if from a health perspective, if Dr. Rawls would like to chime in on those two. So thank you, Douglas. Moving on to Drew Percival from K1 Speed. By lines in the opening. Drew?
Yes, can you hear?
Hello, Drew?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Awesome. Yes, my name is Drew Percival. I'm the Senior Regional Manager for K1 Speed. We're an indoor go-karting center. We have 30 locations around the country. We have one in Orlando, Florida, and that's the one I'm requesting to present to the board right now. We have already been permitted to open in 3 states, Georgia, Utah, and Arizona, and have had great success there. And we're excited to get the attractions in Orange County open as well and provide a great, basically awesome experience for our customers there. Some things we're doing, we've got signage at the entrances, promoting social distancing, going over our safety procedures, and just overall the process that goes. We have developed an online process for our customers to be able to make their accounts, as well as buy races to limit contact. Feedback, let me see if I can. Is that better? Can you hear me still?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, good. I was getting feedback. It was hard for me to hear what was going on. So we've come up with the online processes to be able to make accounts and buy their races. So it limits the contact with employees and guests. They can just show up to the center and race. We've installed cashier sneeze guards for those customers that come into the store. All employees and customers will be required to wear face masks. We already, even before this pandemic, provided face masks to all our customers to wear under the helmets and to keep everything sanitized. So that process will still be in place. We have signage for all of our rules and regulations visible to customers, so it's less contact with the employees having to present everything to the customers themselves. All of our carts will be cleaned and sanitized before every use. We've got industrial grade cleaners that we've developed or been in partnership with that will keep everything clean and sanitized on contact. We've also partnered with ResBar Technologies. It is an air purification disinfection system that will be installed in all of our pit areas. It will constantly clean our helmets and create basically a complete safe environment within the pit. It's a technology that's approved by NASA as well as every other sanitation community out there, and it's going to be able to provide great safety. Hand washing will be enforced to all of our employees. We've come up with a full disinfection procedure and providing masks as well as gloves to all of our customers while they're in the building. I think that touches on most of it. The rest of it is in that presentation that was submitted. I know I'm out of time, so I'll move on.
All right, Drew, thank you. Moving on, I'd like to introduce Jeff Trudeau, General Manager of NOAA Adventure Park, to provide his update and reopening guidance. Jeff.
Yes, good morning, everybody, and thank you for this opportunity to present. We are NOAA Adventure Park. We are a 100% outdoor water-based family entertainment center. We offer wakeboarding, an obstacle park, floating obstacle park, paddleboarding, kayaking, a climbing course, and we have an outdoor-only restaurant. Our social distancing guidelines are consistent with the 7 guidelines provided. We also have added some of our own. We have dedicated cleaners that will go around and keep any touch points clean. We have reduced all touch points, so people are doing everything on their smart devices, and they have gone to a cashless system, so there will be no cash transaction at any part of the park. As well as our early closing when we first found out about the COVID-19. We closed on March 17th, showing concern for our staff and our guests. And as from our reopening plan that we submitted, we're still only going to open the wake park and the aqua park, not opening up the climbing obstacle as there are too many touch points. And we find that we control the other activities to the best of our abilities to provide social distancing, as well as our social distancing lines that we've placed down. We've also reduced seating and spread them out, and have signages all over the park encouraging guests to wear masks. All of our employees are required to wear masks and log in. They have a 6-question questionnaire that they must sign, and we also check their temperatures before they start their shift. If anybody is feeling sick, they are going to be sent home, and we will require a doctor's note before they come back. And we really are looking forward to being able to open as soon as possible, as we feel we are prepared to open immediately with a limited capacity and limited activities. With you guys' blessing, we're very confident we can provide a very safe experience for our staff and our guests.
All right, Jeff, thank you very much, sir. Moving on to our last presenter, I'd like to introduce Richie Armstrong, owner of Magical Way, Slingshot, and Starflyer of NOAA Adventure Park. He is going to provide a update and guidelines for those 3 establishments.
Hi, Jesse. This is Carol from Orange County. There is one more presenter after Mr. Armstrong, and that's Mr. Brian Wayne from Wonderworks.
Oh, my apologies.
That's okay. Just wanted to note that. Thank you.
Apologies. Yes. So,
no
Richie, you're on.
Yes, good morning. My name's Richie Armstrong. I'm the owner of 4 businesses in the iDrive Resort area. 3 of those businesses are actually small attractions. Quickly, just wanted to thank the committee for their time today and the efforts they are putting into helping us businesses getting back on our feet and getting the economy moving again. The attractions I represent today are Orlando Starflyer, Orlando Slingshot, and Magical Midway. All the local businesses based here, Magical Midway since 2000, Orlando Slingshot since 2001, and Orlando Starflyer, it's the new kid on the block since 2018, and it's actually our second birthday on June the 1st, so we are looking forward to that. I want to emphasise we are small attractions. We are not large theme parks. All three businesses can comply comfortably with CDC guidelines and social distancing protocols. Every employee will be temperature checked at the beginning of every shift, and a register will be kept at each location to monitor the employee's health. Masks and gloves will be worn by all employees. All employees to be trained on the importance of hygiene and hand sanitisation. Employees will be trained in social distancing requirements and how to deal with guests and social distancing issues and how to communicate those issues with the guests that are arriving. All employees to be trained in new guest traffic flows to ensure social distancing through the queue line and through the ride experience. COVID-19 and social distancing signage is placed all around the attractions. Hand sanitisers around the attractions for employees and guests. We've installed plexiglass at all ticket office windows. Seats, harnesses, handles to be wiped clean after every ride. Handrails and common use areas to be continuously wiped down. Guests will only be allowed to ride with family members or guests they arrive with. And where possible, multiple exit gates will be used to ensure social distancing while leaving the ride areas. Ride attendants will be continuously advising guests of social distancing guidelines. Rides, seats, harnesses, handles, handrails and common use areas will all be sanitised prior to opening the next day. All of these procedures are laid out in our reopening guidelines. The Orlando Starflyer, it's a standalone attraction. It employs 25 to 30 staff. We will reduce the ride capacity by 50% to only 12 riders maximum per ride, each pairing approximately 40 feet apart. We'll use multiple exit gates to avoid any clusters and to assist with the social distancing protocol. All functions of the guest experience at this attraction are outdoors. The Orlando Slingshot, a standalone attraction, approximately 20 to 25 staff. The ride capacity is 2 people. Only 2 people can go on this attraction at any time. All functions of the guest experience are outdoors at this attraction. And Magical Midway, a family-friendly fun centre. It employs 40 to 50 staff. All rides will be reduced to 50% capacity. We will actually, at this stage, keep our indoor arcade closed, and all functions of the guest experience at this facility will be outdoors. We were fortunate enough to receive the government-assisted PPP loans approximately 2 weeks ago. Part of the loan forgiveness requirements is 75% of the loan must go towards payroll. The only possibility we have of achieving that threshold and bringing more employees back into the workforce and off of unemployment is for the business to be allowed to open. If we can't open and we have to pay a large portion of the loan back, then that may cause financial difficulty in the future. In summary, iDrive's a predominantly visitor destination, whether that's locals or the tourists. The businesses are open, the businesses that are open need the support of small attractions and parks. They need Orlando Starflyer, they need Orlando Slingshot, Magical Midway, Icon Park, Fun Spot, Gatorland, all of these small attractions. Without these attractions, the people won't start coming back to International Drive. We all need to be open to assist each other. The Starflyer, Slingshot and Magical Midway are small attractions, not large theme parks, and we can comfortably comply with the CDC guidelines and social distancing protocols. All functions of the guest experiences at these businesses is outdoors. Nothing will be indoors. Through the employees that we've already brought back onto the payroll, and we have already prepared our 3 businesses, and we are ready to open. We have health and safety procedures for employees and guests already in place. We need your assistance to be allowed to open, and we'll also support the surrounding businesses that are already open. We need to get back to business, get the economy moving, and we would like you to give us permission to open on Friday, May the 22nd. I appreciate your time today and the consideration you've given us. We'll be happy to answer any questions at the end. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Armstrong. Great presentation. I'd like to move on to our last presenter, Mr. Brian Wayne, General Manager of WonderWorks. Mr. Wayne.
Good morning, everybody. First off, thank you for having me on this call. I really appreciate having been able to provide input for WonderWorks. I represent WonderWorks Orlando. We've been open since 1998. We also have 6 other attractions throughout the country. Actually, one has already opened and received fantastic feedback with the same procedures I'm about to go over. We also have another attraction in Pigeon Forge that's getting ready to open this Friday, also with the same procedures. But just to kind of focus on what we're doing with WonderWorks, since we are an indoor attraction, is we want to focus first with the employees. We feel that employee training is crucial right now. And before we had closed back in March, we had already started a cleaning regimen, but we are going to review everything in detail again. So as far as employee safety, they're going through a short orientation. They're going over a bunch of different items, including hand washing guidelines, building cleaning and sanitation, which is the main focus, proper handling of face masks, proper glove use, and general COVID-19 prevention. On the cleanliness side of the building, we are going to be doing deep cleaning with CDC-approved products every morning and evening before we open and after we close. Since we'll have limited hours upon reopening, this will allow us to do extensive cleaning in the building. At the same time, we're doing a cleaning force that is going to be active the entire operation hours. They'll be doing each and every floor of WonderWorks, wiping down all touchable surfaces, all exhibits, every single floor of the building. And on the operations side as well, some of our attractions may be closed. We feel that we cannot, on certain attractions, keep that social distancing. Other things we are putting into place is obviously reduced capacity. We are a smaller building, so we want to make sure our guests as well as our employees keep that 6-foot distance at all times. So we'll be constantly monitoring our capacity, walking the floors, making sure everybody's adhering to that because that's really important. We'll have markers on the ground for several of the attractions, a lot of the queue lines. We have face guards in front of every register to protect the employees. All employees will be wearing face masks and subject to temperature checks every day. If they exceed a certain temperature, they will be not allowed to work for the day. In addition to that, signage throughout the facility. We want to make sure everybody knows what's going on. As soon as guests enter the building, they're going to have to read a safety guideline. It's going to go through everything we're doing at WonderWorks to keep everyone safe. And they're going to have to verbally acknowledge that upon purchasing tickets. So we just want to make sure all our guests are informed. It's throughout the entire building. You will not be able to miss it. We've also added a ton of sanitizing stations. So we already have a lot at WonderWorks to start with, but we've added about 15 to 20 more just to kind of encourage, we're constantly sanitize your hands. We're telling them where restrooms are on each level so they can wash their hands. Just making sure everybody is safe in the building. Entrance and exit doors are separated now, so there's only one entrance in, one exit out. So it's very simple and for the guests to understand and comply with. So we are looking, and I would appreciate your, our recommendation is that we want to open next Friday. That would be May 29th. So I would appreciate your consideration for our plan. And thank you again for the time.
All right. Thank you, Brian. And I thank all the presenters today. Great presentations. I'd like to move on straight into a discussion. I'd like to give the floor to Dr. Rawls first. And if he had any questions or his perspective in regards to from a health side. Dr. Rawls.
Jesse, I'm sorry. This is Carol with Orange County staff. I just want to notate that Dr. Wong is on. So he has arrived. And then we also have the 3 presenters from Monday, should the task force have questions for them as well. They're on the line. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Yeah, I was late for probably 10 minutes, but I listened to most of the presentations. Great presentations today.
Great. Good to see you, Dr. Wong. Dr. Walls.
Thank you. Yeah, and I agree. Great presentations. It's clear that there's been a lot of thought given to the safe reopening of these businesses, and also I think some great experience already based on some of the reopenings that have happened in other locations. So a lot of certainly lessons learned that I'm sure are going to be applied to the scenario here in Orlando. I heard all of the things I think that the public should expect, to want to. The high focus on sanitizing the high touch surfaces, as well as signage, social distancing. Definitely a well thought out process. No particular concerns on my part. In fact, I think it's clear by listening to everybody that the business owners and leadership are really taking this seriously, and it's clear that we all understand what's at risk if we don't get this right. We all want this process to go well. So definitely support the direction that things are going in, and certainly can answer whatever questions you might have.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Rawls. Any questions for Dr. Rawls concerning any of this? What I'd like to point out, and I believe it was Richie Armstrong, I truly appreciate the extreme efforts towards employee training, right? We talk about the face and we talk about all these measures, but we need to train our employees how to react, how to speak to the customers or clients. And I'm sure everyone has that in their plan. I just think that Mr. Armstrong outlined it a little bit more in depth in his presentation, but that's important to me to make sure that our employees or our associates know how to conduct themselves around all of this too. So that's my input. Any other questions for any of the presenters?
Yes, good morning. It's Dan. I want to just make a couple comments about we've seen now 8 presentations, right? And certainly one is more sincere and focused than the other. I mean, the emphasis on what Dr. Rawls is just alluding to is clear, and there's no way that these ladies and gentlemen that have presented to us are taking this very, very seriously. They need to get open. We need to get them open, and we need to just establish a minimum standard. I think that came up in the earlier presentation, but there needs to be a minimum quantity of requirements, and then we proceed. I don't know if it's a 7-step process, but I am very satisfied, and I appreciate the time and diligence that everyone of the presenters have put into this. It makes a big difference, and that's what we're after here. So confidence building is readily apparent in their efforts to date. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Anyone else?
Jesse. Hi, Jesse. It's Adrian from Merlin Entertainment here. Firstly, a big thank you to the presenters again. I think there is a lot of great work there that's gone on. And I have to say again, just to reiterate, I think the level of cleanliness and the way that we've approached this at all the sites is exemplary. I also think that care has been put into this, and I think in the recommendation it's really important that those specific touch points, we talk about a minimum standard, but I think the specific touch points have been addressed that are specific to that individual business, like the wiping down of the arcade games or the helmets in the case of the go-karts, the harnesses, the straps, the touchless operation on the waiver forms when you read the detail. I think there has been a level of diligence that's been taken to specific needs of each individual business. So I think it's excellent work.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Adrian.
Jesse, this is Frank Geckel with Destinations. I do think the presentations were excellent, not only this morning, but in the provided written information in advance of the meeting. Every one of the presenters discussed social distancing. I heard Richie Armstrong talk about a 50% occupancy. My question is my single question is for the presenters or for the working group. Are we recommending 100% occupancy upon reopening, or a phased approach like the restaurants went from 25% for the first 2 weeks and are now at 50%?
I'm under the impression that we are following the guidelines from the governor in phase 1 with a 50% occupancy in any establishment. So I'm not sure if I'm If that's different.
So each of these presentations, in addition to the social distancing mentioned, would assume a 50% occupancy upon reopening, not to exceed 50%.
That's what I'm assuming. So if anyone would like to correct me on that, maybe from the county.
Georgiana, is that something you can answer?
Safe assumption. Oh, can you hear me? I think that's a safe assumption. Is the occupancy addressed in the plans? Does any of the, I'm sorry, I had to step away from a moment, so I didn't hear all the presentations, but was that addressed in the plans that are being considered?
I did not hear the exception.
Yesterday, we had a general set of guidelines that we consolidated that did have 50% in it. I think right now, Jesse, might be a good time to ask the group if they think the consolidated guidelines would be the way to go versus they all seem to mirror the same type of thing that the consolidated guidelines have, which did represent the 50% and all those different protocols.
So, and again, I may need some guidance from the county on this. We wanted to present these certain guidelines, minimum guidelines that they would have to adhere to. It seems as though what we're doing today is voting on their plans as a group that would then go as a recommendation to the mayor and to the general task force. And then the mayor has obviously the last say so per se. I don't know if we're actually talking about setting guidelines today. And Carol or Carol, can you?
Jesse, that is correct. Today, the purpose is to vote on these businesses that presented not only on Monday, but today, according to their guidelines and the cover letter and according to what was on the governor's executive order, versus just coming up with a set of guidelines. Now, we do have the 7 guidelines that we've come up with as a county. So by minimum, abide by that and the CDC guidelines. So that is what we have discussed.
And that's what that's what we heard, I think, throughout all the presentations, that they were adhering to our 7 guidelines that, Chuck and your group recommended and was voted for. So I think if they meet those ones, then anything above that will be considered by the general task force and the mayor himself. So, so I don't know if that answers your questions, Chuck.
So one of the 7 guidelines in Chuck, that is the 50% occupancy.
Not in the original. I don't believe in the original guidelines. We're talking our outline guidelines that Chuck put a couple of weeks ago did not outline any percentage or occupancy. So I'm assuming, again, going back to the phase 1, governor's full phase 1 would be 50% at this point.
This is Raul from the health department. We will not recommend opening a full capacity at least in the first 2 weeks. And a plan is always a plan, and it can be nicely presented, and they deserve a lot of credit, but implementation is a different thing. And I think the parks that are trying to open should talk to City Walk because I have learned from them that it's more taxing than we think to keep these surfaces clean, and it requires a lot of resources and a lot of people going around. Of course, these parks are smaller, and so though it will be, I guess, more manageable. But what City Walk have learned, or Universal in this case, is that it requires a lot of people to go around cleaning surfaces. So the capacity, the issue with capacity is not only, and I know there is an economic argument here to be made, and believe me, I want the economy to go back. I don't want to have COVID-19. I don't want to be working 14 hours a day on this. But the approach to phase opening is to give you the ability to identify if you have any issues at the beginning, so that if you have any spread of any germ at the beginning of your processes where you are going to find issues, you don't have a full capacity with a larger implication. Though does allow you to test your theory that we can do this, we can do that, or we need to do this, or we need to reshift to that. And then you are ready for the next approach, will be full capacity, because you have implemented and tested all the measures that you put in place.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Pino.
If I can.
Hello.
Okay.
Yes. Sorry.
Yeah, I think, all the great presentations today demonstrated that, this business really thought very, very seriously about this, and then they have put a lot of thinking into this process. My understanding is that, each of these businesses is different, outdoor, indoor, the engineering of the physical structure is different, and some of them have water facilities, some of them do not have, right? So you have these variations, So that's why, we see the recommendations or the guidelines they came up with, they are a little bit different as expected so. But as far as I'm concerned, I think, every one of them is meeting the minimum standards, provided by the county, the 7-point guidelines. So I think, as far as the minimum standards is required, and then many businesses, I believe, they are doing much more than the minimum requirement, right? In regarding to the capacity, I think, this is a moving target. So yes, we are talking about 50% because, that is the guideline provided by the state, right? But if, let's say, we are moving really towards a very positive direction, and next week and the next 2 weeks, we might be talking about something different. We might be talking about full recovery, full capacity. But at least my understanding is, as far as we are talking about the situation right now, I think there should be a consistency in terms of the capacity.
Thank you, Dr. Wong. Any other questions for the presenters or as a group?
I have a question for Dr. Pino. Dr. Pino, yesterday you talked about the data dump of approximately 6,000 cases and how it reflected on the curve. Can you elaborate on, you were going to get further knowledge on that and how that information is accurate or if it was previous information?
So there has been some data dumps lately that has skewed data a little bit, but not significantly that the decision-making process was anywhere flawed by the data itself. Because the numbers, although there were 6,000 new added cases to our line listing, those were all negative, all those 6,000 that I'm talking about. So that's an important differentiation there. We are conducting, that's why we conducted additional analysis. So most of the analysis that I always present, most of it is done in Tallahassee and we consume it. But there were some issues with the database over there, so we conducted our own analysis. We have capacity here to do that and alter the way. So without going into many details, the curve that is publicly displayed is based on the data that the labs are reported to us. So it could be, just to give you an example, it could happen, but it doesn't happen that often, but it could be that we get today a lab that was tested 2 weeks ago or 1 week ago, especially at the beginning when the process was so delayed. So with that, the graph itself is more prone to variances from the lab reporting issue. So we conducted a different curve that was based on the day that the test was performed, independently of when we received it. When the test was performed, we thought that that would be a little more accurate about positivity rate and infection. So with that, we did that, and there are not significant changes. Our curve continued to perform well. We saw an increase of slight increase in the number of cases. But that was kind of expected as we increment and increase social activity and economic activity. We are going to see cases. It's not that we don't want to see cases. We will see cases. It's do we have the ability to track, identify an early warning system to be able to intervene and prevent another massive wave in our country that will disrupt the economy. So the idea is how can we
continue to perform economically, and continue to do it in a safe way so that we can control and keep the pandemic down. That's the game. That's the sweet spot. How can we increase our output without increasing the number of cases to a level that it could either tax our health system or our public health system? Because then that's when we would see major issues. But so far, so good, Chuck. The data is hospitalizations are minimum. Yesterday or before yesterday, we only have 30 people hospitalized in the county due to COVID-19 that are county residents. The hospital could have more people because our system are regional. But county residents, we only have 30 people, I'm sorry. We have good inventories of bed. We have good inventory of ventilators. And the visits to the ER, which is a very early warning system for us, continues to decrease. So with that, we're still in good shape.
Great, thank you, Dr. Pino.
Jesse, we have a few people we need to recognize here in the chat. Mark, you can go first. He had a comment and or a question related to Gatorland and their capacity. And then also Richie had a comment that he'd like to propose. Thanks.
Great. Mark, go ahead.
Thank you, everyone. No, I just wanted to add in there that Gatorland's plan for phase 1 and phase 2 meets and exceeds that 50% capacity. So, we certainly support that that guideline in our opening.
Thank you, sir.
I just wanted to say that in the chat. I didn't know I was going to get called to actually say something about it. That's it. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Armstrong.
Again, thank you. Just in relation to the planning, I mean, and I think I possibly speak on behalf of most of the presentators here today. We've been planning our reopening for a long time. It's not something that we've actually just come up with in the last week or 2 weeks. We had a lot of time to think about it. We actually started planning pre-closing because we were still having to deal with hand sanitisation and starting to think of how we move people through queue lines and do different things more efficiently. And as much as we may have to make some adjustments, some slight adjustments when we do open, then again, we've been making these plans for a long time. We've had a lot of time to think about it, and we've been able to practice some of these things whilst the business has been closed. So I'm confident that all of us presenters and all of us businesses are ready to move to reopen. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Any concerns?
I would like to add something if you allow me. Yes. So I want the business community to understand that I know that no one wants this to be more successful than you guys. And we know that you are ethically looking at the right things to do, to put things in place. And also for your own business interest, you are very interested in this being successful. So we know that we will support you.
Thank you. Thank you. So in the conscious time, we're at 5 minutes left. And I'd like to, if there's no other further discussion or points to discuss, I'd like to propose a motion. So the motion would be to move the plan submitted to Bringing Back Tourism Working Group meets all the plans, to include the 3 that we heard on Monday, meet the requirements of the governor's executive order, and should be submitted to the full economic task force for approval. Do I have a motion from the actual working group committee of Bringing Back Tourism?
Giordano will make a motion to do what you just described. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Second?
I'll second. Sandy.
Sandy, thank you. Second. So everyone in favor on the subcommittee, please say aye.
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 All right, so moved, so passed. So we will take this to the general task force tomorrow. Carol, do we have any presenters tomorrow morning?
Jesse, yes, I wanted to add that. Thank you. We might have some businesses trickle in today because we did provide that as as an option, should they submit their plans before close of business Wednesday, they'd be able to submit or present tomorrow, Thursday, May 21st, and that would be in the morning. So I do have a meeting scheduled on our calendar for public notice. So I would say let's plan to meet tomorrow morning unless we have no submissions.
Carol, that we have any businesses right now. We know that we submitted the request for presentation for tomorrow.
I'm sorry, Dr. Wang, can you repeat the question?
Do we have any or a list of companies who made the request to make a presentation for tomorrow?
As of now, we do not have any applications submitted, but as mentioned, we did provide that as an option that they would have until close of business Wednesday to provide any guidelines and cover letters. So right now we do have a meeting scheduled tomorrow in case we do have some applications that are submitted.
Thank
so
you.
We'll await your direction, Carol, on tomorrow's meeting. Then if we do, should we still have one if we don't have any, I guess is the next question with the subcommittee members.
Just it's Dan. In the event that there are no presentations, we still have some work to do, right? As it relates to moving this to the next level. I'm not sure what that is. We made the motion. Now there has to be another step in terms of a hard date, I guess, would be one of the things. I'm not sure. I think there's still some work to be done though.
Well, Jesse, the other part is, what are we really giving the mayor at this point? Are we going to say, here are all the plans, go look at them all, or do we want to meet back tomorrow and consider doing a consolidated plan? Because if I'm the mayor, I want to look at these smaller attractions and say, they're following the guidelines. Everybody's agreed to this set of guidelines. And then he can make a recommendation to the state. The mayor does not make the call on this. This has to go to the state for them to approve it. So do you want 6 or 7 or 8 plans out there? And what happens to the guys on 192 who perhaps have not been part of this and have not submitted anything? Or do we want to submit one set of consolidated guidelines to the mayor to set to the state so all those other attractions who weren't part of this discussion are covered in that?
Chuck, I agree to a certain point. I know that I had direction from the county that to that point, the mayor was going to review all 8. He was wanting to look at them as individuals, as long as they were meeting the 7 guidelines that we set forth as a task force, and then he would send a recommendation letter to the governor. So, Carol, can you please clarify that?
And Carol, also, how does that address the ones that aren't part of the state? For instance, the golf place on International Drive, or one of the go-kart places that's not here in Dreddy, or the attractions that are on 192. I just think you're going to see an uproar from all those other ones if these 8 are able to open and they're not considered just because they're not involved in this process.
Hi, Chuck. This is Carol. And Georgiana, please feel free to chime in whenever. So according to the governor's executive order, it's up to each municipality to make that decision, and then that letter is endorsed and sent to the state. So for Orange County, we have been receiving applications for those entities that are within our jurisdiction. That's one. So I don't know if that answers your question about the Osceola and 192 businesses. And then actually there's been some establishments that have reached out to us that said, look, we're not ready to open. In particular, there's 2. So they've had the option to present today, but they don't feel like they're ready to open. So, and then the information has been out there through the International Drive Chamber of Commerce, IAPA, and Visit Orlando's members. And so we've honed down the list. If you're retail or restaurant, those are kind of already questioned or have been answered with the executive order. We're talking more about the smaller amusement parks. And that's all I have. I don't know, Georgiana, if you wanted to add to that, or if that.
No, I think you addressed the point. The direction that we've been given is that we are looking at individual plans. This isn't while the plans are being sent all as one together to the full Economic Recovery Task Force, it is just those plans that have been submitted that are being considered under the executive order.
Okay.
Understanding that there's an opportunity for anyone who feels like they want to submit a plan for consideration to do so.
Chuck, does that answer it for now?
It does. I think there's going to be some holes, but I guess they'll be able to go back through the process. Yeah, I think there's some places on iDrive that will be missed on this, but so be it. They'll probably open anyhow.
Right. Plus, I think they need to submit that plan. So it's their responsibility to do that. And so if they fail to do that or they don't do it in a timely manner, then maybe they're not ready. So we'll take what we have now and then we'll move forward. So, yes.
Good work, everybody.
Yeah, great work. Dan, to your question, I'd say we still do it. And the reason why is I believe there's another subject that wants to be brought up by Michael and on our subcommittee in regards to hotels and banquets and how that is. And there was no time today to discuss that. So that could be a talking point for tomorrow. So, and plus whoever else wants to submit their plans before our task force meeting.
Jack, for that, there was a mention about the convention center in a previous meeting. So if we have time tomorrow, maybe that can be also put into that discussion for tomorrow.
Great. Well, we're at 11:17. Great work, great presentations. I think we're moving in the right direction. We're getting businesses open. Hopefully, we can get iDrive and Gatorland and FunSpot and everyone just rocking and rolling. So I appreciate everyone. If no one has any other questions, we'll go ahead and adjourn this meeting and we'll revisit back tomorrow at 10:15. Everyone have a great day.
Thank you.
Good work, Jesse.
Thanks, sir.
Thanks, guys.
Jesse.
Jesse.